Om Jnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
On Vedic culture, which is a very big topic to speak on in half an hour or even half a lifetime. Every society has some culture which is based either explicitly or implicitly, directly or indirectly, on a philosophy or worldview. Very broadly, we can say that modern materialistic society is based on the misunderstanding that life is meant for sense enjoyment and that life is a product of matter. So therefore eat, sleep, drink, be merry and enjoy, for tomorrow we shall all be dead. We are not answerable to anyone. The Vedic culture is very broad, but as it's suggested, it's based on the understanding of the Vedic literature, and it is a identifiable genre or type. Generic, you know that word? Yeah. So the noun from which the adjective generic comes is genre. It's it's a specific. It's identifiable as a specific culture. The basic point to be understood that it's all based on the knowledge of the Vedic literature, and that this life is not all in all. That this life is a preparation for a future life. Now there are many schools of philosophy which claim to be based on the Vedas, but they all accept that there is life after death and that we get future lives according to how we act in this life, as understood through the Vedic literature. Of course, that's interpreted in various ways, and some saying that, well, we have many lives, so let us enjoy sense gratification life after life. We'll act according to the Vedic directions and not commit sinful activities. We'll perform pious activities, by which we can get elevated to higher planets, and then we'll come back down again when our pious the result of our pious activities is finished. We'll do more pious activities and we'll go up and down. This is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna. No, before that comes Trividyamam Sumapa Puta Papa. That by following the three Vedas, they go up to the heavenly planets, and then Taitam Bhuktva Swargalokam Vishalang Shine Punye Martya Lokam Vishanti. Having gone there, they come back again. So this process is not recommended by those who are on a higher level. They understand that we should get liberated from birth and death, because material life is miserable. Even on heavenly planets, there's no happiness. What to speak of in Bosnia, which isn't a heavenly planet. I don't know if any of you noticed. America isn't either. Sitting in Bosnia, you might think America's heavenly, but it's not. And even heaven isn't heavenly for that matter. It's all a big illusion that there's any happiness in the material world. Now, the highest level of Vedic culture is to understand from Bhagavad Gita, as it is, Kakava, Yes, and Srimad Bhagavatam, the jewels of the Vedic literature, which are meant for the topmost swan-like man, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are all His eternal servants, and the topmost perfection of life is to surrender at His lotus feet and go to the spiritual world to serve Him eternally. And guess what? In the spiritual world, they follow Vedic culture without the misunderstandings. Krishna himself follows the Vedic, or rather the Vedic culture is the setting within which Krishna performs his transcendental pastimes. So, although there are different philosophies or interpretations of the Vedas or levels of understanding of the Vedic knowledge, they all follow basically the same culture. Although, therefore it can be said to be one generic group. So there are even Mayavadis, Karmavadis, devotees of Krishna, demigod worshippers. There are all so many different varieties. But they all have in common that well, there are many points. First of all, understanding that everything that we do creates a reaction. So we have to be careful what we do. And what reaction comes is defined in the Vedic literature. But it can be very complex. Therefore, people approach Brahmanas, people have studied this. They're like interpreters of scripture. Something at one level, Brahmanas can be like lawyers because they say, in one sense, Brahmanas are like, some of them at a lower level, they're like lawyers. Because someone may go to them and said, well, I killed a spider, what should I do? It's a sin. Can you imagine in Bosnia people thinking killing a spider is a sin? But it is. So they'll say, well, you have to do one activity to nullify the effect of this sin. So at the lower level, it's also an important level for common people in the Vedic culture. They guide people how to act in day-to-day life. And if you go to holy places, I just brought out a new book, you can see later about various holy places in India. There are Brahmanas who will guide you what to do. That having come here, the first thing you should do is shave, take a bath in the holy place, fast, and then different rituals you have to do. Nowadays people don't do all these things because people come in buses and it's become a religious tourism business. But still, it's religious. India's culture is deeply religious. Actually, the whole world was until the advent of the modern age with its grossly hedonistic ambience. So Brahmanas will guide, so people respected Brahmanas as people who can help us to act in a way that is for our higher benefit. What is beneficial to us was understood, is a very important point, not just in terms of the here and now, the present situation, but in terms of the future life and future lives also. And people would tend to act in a manner that is for their long-term benefit rather than short-term benefit. This is a sign of intelligence. Just like you may work in a factory, but then you may go to night school to get some qualifications so that you can become an engineer in the factory rather than just a lever puller or an ordinary worker. So if you didn't go to the school, you could sit at home and watch TV or go in the park and chat with your friends, but you put some time, you sacrifice some time for your future benefit. So people who act for their future benefit, they are more intelligent than people who just think of how I can enjoy myself now. So on the whole, we can say that the Vedic culture is more elevated than that of the present materialistic culture, which is more or less based on the animal platform. They don't know that, just like animals, they have no higher knowledge. They're simply interested in ahara nidra bhaya maitunam cha, eating, sleeping, mating and defending. And although they may do so in a more sophisticated way, without knowledge that after the body is finished, everything is not finished. Without that knowledge, it's a civilization which, although superficially is advanced, technologically advanced, but in terms of genuine knowledge of our existential position, they are no more advanced than the cats and dogs. And that reflects in their behavior, which is what I was saying. That every culture is based on philosophical understanding. So if there's no philosophical understanding of who we are, that there is a higher purpose of life, then we're going to be just like animals. That's all. So Vedic culture is meant for living as peacefully as possible in this world which by nature is disturbed. We can't expect any real peace in this world. To even aspire for that is foolishness. In a world where it's actually full of violence, not just during a Bosnian war or a Lebanese war, but the whole situation of the world is full of violence. You can go out to the mountains and it looks very peaceful, but what's going on is there are animals are eating other animals. One bigger insect is eating a smaller insect. In the water, the big fish is eating the small fish. The small fish is also eating the bigger fish. You know that? Sometimes the small fish eat the big fish. They go up and they take a little bit out of the big fish's body, and the big fish turns around and swallows the whole little fish. So this is jivo jivasya jivanam. One living being is living by violence on another. It's not a peaceful world. But the Vedic culture is meant for establishing as peaceful a situation as possible, the best use of a bad bargain, so that we can maximize our concentration on the real purpose of life, which is that having attained this human form of life, which is very rare, it is attained after going through 8,400,000 species of life. Having attained it, we have sufficient intelligence to inquire what is the meaning of life. So having attained the human form of life, the really intelligent person thinks that, why am I suffering in this world? Why is there suffering? We have to suffer. Old age, disease and death, and from the Vedic literature we understand again reborn, and again struggle and suffering. So, labdva sudurlabamidam babusam bhavante manusham idrisham mihaj manusham artadam anityam api hatira turnam yateta napatek nishrayasaya vishayakalu sarvatasyat. That having attained this human form of life, which is very rare, we should understand it is very valuable. Manusham artha is temporary. We're not going to be here long. But turnam yateta napate danumrityayavan. As long as we are here, we haven't died yet. So let us utilize the opportunity to find out what is the highest goal, what is the real goal of life. And if we think that, well, I can enjoy myself, Then the answer is you already so-called enjoy yourself in so many species of life. So now we should restrain the senses from interaction with the sense objects and concentrate on the Supreme. So this is the basic background of Vedic culture. It's a very big topic. I've written an introductory book on that, and I've also written a as yet unpublished, much bigger book on the details of it, which Krishna willing I may be able to publish within a year or two. This knowledge of Vedic culture is essential for human society, because without it, it's not really human society at all. It's, as Srila Prabhupada often said, it's a society of polished animals. Sometimes people think Prabhupada was too heavy, he was calling people cats and dogs, but actually they may think it's insulting, but I would say it's insulting to the cats and dogs, because the humans, they're not as elevated as the cats and dogs. At least the cats and dogs don't abort their children and organize massive slaughterhouses. So, subhuman. It appears to be a very advanced society, and people think that living a normal life is very good, but it's actually a disaster. What the normal person does in the course of a normal day is enough to send him for many, many lifetimes to hellish existence. So it's not at all normal by the standard of Vedic understanding. So in Vedic culture, yes, it has an entirely different basis. In any culture, in any civilization, any basis, foundation, in any society, there is some control, there's leadership, there are some utopian ideas of how of creating a society where all people are equal, but it never happens. Fraternity, what is that? Liberté, égalité, fraternité. The French Revolution was set up on the hope or the ideal that there can be liberty for all, fraternity and equality. But in the material situation, this can never be. In fact, although Western civilization has taken up the principle of liberty, people should have as much liberty as possible. This is not there in Vedic culture, except for persons who are spiritually advanced. If we give liberty to do what you like to persons who are not aware of the purpose of life and who are not sense-controlled, then they will misuse it. So it's better for them not to have liberty. We can see in the modern society, people have the freedom to act to a large extent as they like. So that's what we're told. Although we're programmed by the educational system and by the TV and the magazines and the whole society to act in a certain way. But the freedom is there. The idea is that you should have freedom to act your life as you like, to the largest extent possible. But then people act as they're acting like animals. Freedom should not mean freedom to slaughter animals. There should not be freedom to engage in sinful activities. You may think, well, why not? People like it. They like it, but they end up going to hell. And it makes the whole society hellish also. So it's just like a child. You don't give freedom to a child. If you give freedom to a child, a young baby, he'll kill himself. And maybe kill others too. They have to be trained and guided. So people who don't have spiritual knowledge they don't have knowledge of the goal of life. They also require to be controlled and trained. So giving freedom to persons who don't have knowledge of the goal of life and who are not sense controlled is not good for them or for society. Now, if we say these things, probably people will get really upset because everyone should have as much freedom as possible. But no, if we understand the actual purpose of life, then it's better for everyone's benefit that people be controlled. In the modern age, there's the idea of women's liberation. Women should be free to do, and there's so much pornography. Better that they're controlled. They don't have the opportunity to sell their bodies and show themselves naked or half naked or quarter naked or whatever. So, and the idea that freedom, everyone should just, you get married and then you don't like your husband or you don't like your wife, so you just divorce and get another one. But this is cat and dog life. There's no sense of responsibility. So Srila Prabhupada presented this Vedic culture, and actually there are many things which are revolutionary according to the modern idea, but then the modern idea, it's actually a disaster. The whole modern society is a disaster, and although they're very proud that we've made a great civilization, what's so great about it? People have to work so hard just to get what's available in the fields. But you're not now in the European Union. You're not even allowed to farm. You're not even allowed to grow food. It's insane. But they're so proud that we are so advanced. So Srila Prabhupada, he wanted to introduce the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, the practice of Krishna consciousness, which is based on the Vedic culture. Krishna consciousness, the practice of Krishna consciousness can be very favorably enacted on the background of Vedic culture. The Vedic culture fosters an atmosphere which is favorable for Krishna consciousness. I was speaking a little bit about this morning, that in a grossly materialistic society where people will say, well, why are you wasting so much time praying? Why don't you enjoy it? Why don't you eat meat? So people, they won't understand. The Vedic culture is one in which this morning in the Srimad Bhagavatam verse it was discussing about how Shukdev Goswami would only go to the house of householders long enough for the time for them to milk a cow, and he would take milk from them. And the whole concept is completely foreign to modern culture. First of all, that everyone should keep cows. The cow is the emblem of religion. The cow gives liquid religion in the form of milk, which nourishes the brain tissues necessary for higher understanding. And that there are wandering sadhus, people who wander, and people would say, well, what's the use? What do they contribute to society? But the householders understand that they have the highest contribution to society, because they understand that sadhus are connected with a higher reality, and they only interact with it. They can go to the caves of the mountains, but they live in the world simply to benefit others by pointing them, directing them to the actual reality, which is beyond this world of birth and death. So, cow protection, this is an essential part of Vedic culture. Krishna is described as Go Brahmana Hitta, one who is always thinking of the welfare of the cows and the Brahmanas. And Brahmana doesn't mean one by caste, by birth, but one who is actually absorbed in higher understanding. Yes, sadhu came. Talking about sadhus. Yes, so we can stand up to receive sadhu. Can I have a little kirtan? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Jagadguru Maharaj ki Jai.